Or like, I think the intent should matter a lot too, right? Like depending on if you want to simplify it or not. You might be like, give me a performance check using dexterity instead of, but you could go the other way. You could be like, give me an acrobatics check using your charisma score because you're really trying to sell the performance that you're giving, where someone who doesn't understand and know gymnastic and may not be trained in those things, like you may be able to kind of fool them with a bunch of glitz and glam, but because they don't understand the technical aspects of it. Whereas someone who's a highly skilled acrobat would look at it and go, "Oh, that looks pretty, but here's everything that's actually wrong with it."
I'm Nerdarchy Ted.
And I'm Nerdarchy Dave.
Welcome to Nerdarchy, for nerds, by nerds. All right, we're at another video. This time we're going to start a new series, see how this winds up working out. And we're talking about Skills 101, Acrobatics.
Yeah, so we're talking about acrobatics, the skill proficiency. We actually have an article series that kind of corresponds with these over on the website. So we're like, hey, let's take these and we'll talk about them over on the YouTube channel. In the description, you'll find a link to that article. With that, let's jump in, man.
All right, so this is a 101. So we're talking about Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, and we're talking about skill checks, which I guess we should mention. Skill checks are an ability check tailored to or tied to a specific skill set. So we should, I guess, explain the difference between a skill check and a saving throw real quick.
Sure.
So a skill check is where a certain situation has come up where you are testing yourself on a particular vein, in this particular case, acrobatics, something that has to do with your manual dexterity or your balance, whereas a saving throw is something where it's contested by whatever is causing that to happen, be it a spell, be it a hazard, be it some kind of effect caused by some exterior force.
Yeah, so one of them tends to be more about what you're trying to do, where the other is more about what you're trying to keep from happening.
Good explanation there. So for this, we want to look at, what is acrobatics? So it's a combination of balance and moving your body in potentially unusual ways.
Yeah, you often will also use acrobatics to escape if you're being grappled, instead of athletics if it's a better check for you.
Whether you're trying to navigate your way across, a slippery dance floor or a slippery frozen lake.
Or if you're trying to tightrope walk across a rope or a line, maybe the rigging in a ship, also performing backflips, somersaults, basically feats of acrobatics.
So if you're looking at anything that you would see like at the Olympics or any kind of gymnastics kind of competition, I would say all of those things would fall into the realm of acrobatics.
Yeah, there's some weird areas too, like parkour seems to very much combine the skill of acrobatics with athletics, and I think it's just a matter of figuring out when you would use which, because a lot of that is jumping and running athletics, but there's also a lot of flipping and doing acrobatic maneuvers to gain positioning as well.
So D&D does tend to like to simplify these kind of things. So sometimes, you're doing something athletic, so it's this, or, this could be acrobatic. So rather than, I want you to make both checks to see how well the whole thing works, you just make one, and sometimes the DM is forgiving and lets you pick. Whereas other times, if it might be like drawn out over more of a skill challenge to see how the overall performance is, you might say, okay, for the first part, you're going to jump and you'll make an athletics check. For the second part, you're going to see how the flip looks and you're going to do an acrobatics check. And then to kind of see how your flourish finishes, maybe we'll make a performance check. So it's a 1, 2, 3 combination to see how the whole thing looks. But I feel like that's much more rare to kind of happen.
Yeah, that does require a lot, and so just give me a acrobatic check or give me athletics check. Or I think the intent should matter a lot too, right? Like depending on if you want to simplify it or not. You might be like, give me a performance check using dexterity instead of, but you could go the other way. You could be like, give me an acrobatics check using your charisma score because you're really trying to sell the performance that you're giving, where someone who doesn't understand and know gymnastic and may not be trained in those things, like you may be able to kind of fool them with a bunch of glitz and glam, but because they don't understand the technical aspects of it. Whereas someone who's a highly skilled acrobat would look at it and go, "Oh, that looks pretty, but here's everything that's actually wrong with it."
So that actually, dovetails into, an important part is sometimes DMs aren't really aware that you can use alternate stats to go along with it. Typically, yes, acrobatics is going to be linked to your dexterity, but you can absolutely tie it to any other particular stat given the specific situation. So we're going to go through a handful of examples as to how you could use that particular skill with the other 5 stats.
The first stat is strength, right? And also we talk, like, it kind of circles back to one of the things we talked about earlier. Well, what if someone's trying to parkour, right? And instead of making them roll athletics and acrobatics to combine them and come up with it, maybe your GM just goes, you can use acrobatics for this, but I feel like there's a little bit more strength based, so you're going to use your strength instead of your dexterity in this particular case.
Yeah, so whether you're trying to flip over a long thing and you really need to propel yourself further but still use that whole flipping maneuver, I really feel like strength could use that particular case pretty darn well. Whereas if you're looking to do more of a routine where you have to keep going, like perhaps you're trying to jump and balance your way across a series of pillars, well, doing the first one, the second one, the third one might not be overly taxing to you. Doing it over a protracted series of time, really testing your endurance with the use of this particular skill, you could wind up making a constitution acrobatics check in that kind of case.
Yeah, I like that, and I would think of it more in terms of the individual maneuvers that you're performing are actually beneath your skill level and are relatively easy for you. But like you said, maybe it is, it is a long stretch of pillars that you have to hop from one to the other. Maybe they're a little bit wobbly, but even with them being a little bit wobbly, you're a good enough acrobat that generally it wouldn't be a big deal for you, except for it's going to take you an hour to cross. And just the sheer mental and physical fortitude that it's going to take to do that for such an protracted period of time, you're going to have to make, your GM might say, you're going to make X amount of acrobatics checks, but I need a constitution modifier instead of a dex modifier because the maneuvers themselves are pretty easy for you. It's just you're doing it for a long time.
Yeah, so that's an easy way to just be like, all right, let's look at it from this perspective. But you mentioned mental. So if you were to doing like a kind of a almost competition, but not so much like a formal, but like maybe a challenge, if you doing, let's say, playing a game of horse, but with acrobatics, maybe this is a particular tribal tradition that is done where I do a maneuver and then you have to do the exact same maneuver. Maybe you have to remember exact footing placement and flip rotation, what have you. You could wind up, in order to replicate someone else's performance, do an intelligence acrobatics check so that you do exactly as the person had done before you.
Yeah, I would say the longer the routine that you're trying to memorize might call for that. Also, I was also thinking in the sense of like if you're doing an investigation and you know that the culprit is a known acrobat, right? The person you suspect is a known acrobat, and you're investigating the crime scene, and you go to your DM. You know what? I think they came in through that window there, but it looks impossible to reach. But this is how I think they would have done it via a series of flips and jumps and feats of balance. Then I feel like the DM might be able to go, okay, give me an acrobatics check using your intelligence to see if you can deduce the trajectory that they would have had to use in order to get from the ground to that window safely.
Yeah, I'm hoping I guess right, but I believe that there was somebody who's like an excellent acrobatic person in Ocean's 13. I feel like that would be a perfect example, as he's navigating around, like the laser grid and what have you that was in that one. I think that one might be a great example to ascertain how that was done.
Yeah, well, even like we haven't talked about this, but like a contortionist would also use of all the D&D skills, I feel like they would use acrobatics.
Completely.
So yeah, that could work as well. And also, like, you could use the same thing. Like, oh, I think they were brought in and in this chest, and everyone's going, that chest is too small. But you're like, no, this is how you could do it. And mentally, you could like explain it, or you could physically use acrobatics and just show them by getting into the chest yourself.
So sometimes, skills kind of overlap. We talk about investigation and acrobatics, but you could go along the same lines using insight. If you're still kind of doing that, again, that competition, but as opposed to replicating, if you're trying to outthink what is a better move to get out of the way, or anticipate is a great way of looking at it. To counter move what the other person is doing, what is more impressive, what is more showy. So you can make a wisdom acrobatics check to outperform your opponent.
Well, even better too, I would say, like, say there's a bunch of people and they're acrobats or gymnasts and they're all lined up. Can I look at them and see who I think is the best, right? And based off of like just how they're moving around normally, how they're walking across the room, whatever. I think that'd be a great way to say, instead of using your insight check, I will allow you to use acrobatics, but you have to use your wisdom in order to do it, to perceive. Like, I know people that are highly trained martial artists, and they can watch someone walk across the room, and they can assess from that what kind of fighter they think they'll be.
Looking at the balance, how they move, how they control all of their motions and movements, you can pull a lot of information out of it if you happen to be skilled in that particular vein.
And then finally, we have charisma. We kind of just touched on this one earlier.
And this one is, looking at combining acrobatics and performance to make a very showy routine. Now, it's possible that you could be like, all right, make acrobatics and make performance. But sometimes it is easier just to be like, all right, let's make one roll. So give me a charisma acrobatics check to see how well you perform. And when you talk about the Olympics and that kind of stuff where it's a legit competition, I feel that is where ideally that charisma and acrobatics is going to pair up nicely.
Yeah, anywhere where you incorporate showmanship and choreography into your acrobatics would be a great place for charisma to go, because when you're playing to the crowd, figure skating is very much like that as well, where you're doing it to entertain. Sure, there's a high level of athleticism involved as well, but you're also really are a performer, where if you're doing like the parallel bars or the horse or something like that, I feel it's a little bit less about the performance and more about the technical aspect and skills that you're bringing to bear.
You have to bring not only the competition level of athleticism, but the performance of movement needs to be there as well.
Anything in the Olympics they do to music would be like a good example of that. Anything that they're not using music for is technical, and the other stuff is performance, while they both have crossover.
Yeah, I would say, what you're saying, gymnastics and ice skating fit perfectly within that mold. There might be some other things, but it's been a while since I've watched them.
So you could probably use the things that we've just discussed as a basis for a skill challenge using acrobatics, and it could actually be a way for you to actually use acrobatics all over again throughout the skill challenge, using different stats and modifiers, or maybe it'll just inspire you to come up with skill challenges and ways that you could incorporate a skill that doesn't on its surface seem like it belongs in that skill challenge, but with a little thought, it might.
So if you like this video, others like it, as well as all the fantastic content you can find over on Nerdarchy.com, why not come check us out on Patreon and support us over there?
Articles like Acrobatics 101, 5e D&D Skills, and Skill Checks.
Speaking of competitions and whatnot, another great way to help out Nerdarchy would be to check out Nerdarchy the store and a product like Taking Chances. Taking Chances is a collection of games of skill and chance for 5th edition. Inside, you'll find new and different games for both characters and players to engage with, using their in-game skills and proficiencies for some and relying on the luck of the dice for others. Along with the games or establishment where characters can discover and play them. The largest of these, Union Salon, introduces several new toolkits and even more games giving characters a chance to use their tools in an arena-style battle, as well as to investigate a mystery. Included within are 8 new games of skill and chance, 4 establishments, over a dozen unique items, 5 new tool sets, an adventure focused on using tools, as well as a new playable race, the Dwelf.
Let us know what you think about the acrobatic skills that come up in your game. Is it taking a lot? Do you find cool and fun ways to use it? Share your thoughts and ideas down below in the comments with the Nerdarchy community.
While you're down there, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, click on that notification bell. You know the drill.
Quick reminder, we drop new videos here several times a week, so come on back. But you can't wait till then. No worries, we got you covered. Check out D&D Skills Explained, must-have skills.
So until next time,
Stay nerdy.